As we were preparing for this talk, Melissa gave me a gift, a tea towel that said, "I keep hearing it takes a village to raise a child. Do they just show up, or is there like a number to call?"
This is the story of how we built our own village and how sometimes in a small town, you have to build what you want to see.
When I was 8 months pregnant, my husband and I moved from Seattle, Washington to Dillon, Montana. This move took us from a metro area of approximately 4 million to a town of approximately 4,000. We loved it, but it definitely took some mental recalibration as we learned what to expect from a town of that size. When we arrived, I had about enough time to unpack a few boxes and paint the nursery before my son arrived at the start of a particularly long and cold Montana winter.
And as a Montana native, Montana winters can be next level cold, like a brisk 30 below. It can actually be unsafe for an infant to be outside.
So I had a baby, and then I stayed home by myself for about 6 months with an infant who didn't love to sleep. Needless to say, I was excited when summer rolled around. And here's what happened. My husband and I took my son on a walk past the local park, and we saw so many kids and babies. My brain immediately asked, where did all these kids come from? And then it answered, maybe they were stuck inside, like us. And it hit me. There were no indoor spaces for young children in our community, nowhere for them to naturally be before kindergarten started at age 5, no place for them or their families to be, and thus, no place to meet other young families. But then I realized, maybe it just didn't exist yet. Maybe we needed to create it. Inspired by my mom, whose unofficial life work is solving community problems, I set about to see what could be done.
She started with her own research, different types of spaces. What do kids need? What do parents need? Why do spaces matter? She talked with person after person to bring perspective to her ideas. Is there a need? What would it look like in our town? What would it be? And with each person's encouragement and feedback, the idea continued to take shape. And now she knew she needed to find her people, the ones who had been dreaming about this too.
I put out a community invitation for the first meeting of the Early Childhood Coalition of Beaverhead County in early March 2020. And then the world shut down. So naturally, I canceled the meeting and everyone retreated to their own corners. But after a few months and no end to the pandemic in sight, we rescheduled the meeting over Zoom. 9 community members came, 2 of whom continue to serve on our board today. There were others who, like me, saw big gaps in what our community had to offer young children and families. Doctors, early childhood professionals, parents, interventionists. We had found each other. There was now a true we making this project happen. And that's when we found Melissa.
Like Callie, I moved to Dillon 8 months pregnant. Our move was an incredibly stressful one. I had a solid sense of community before we moved, and I felt so isolated in this new place with my new baby, without any sense of how to connect in the midst of a worldwide health crisis. This desire to connect was soon answered in my 6-week postpartum appointment when my doctor learned that I was a trained marriage and family therapist and parent educator who had taken a break from practicing to raise my babies. When Dr. Smith, a board member, told me the dreams of the coalition, I knew that I needed to be a part of this work. I wanted to build a community that supported families, and honestly, I knew that I needed it for myself. There were so many times as a therapist that I wished that I could hand my clients a support system that was outside of my office, a village of their own to be a safety net for them. And I felt a sense of hope that I could help build a network that would prevent families from the crisis I had seen so many times in my office. And I was faced with an opportunity. I could choose either to wait for these connections to come my way, or I could lead the charge and create that space in my own life and for my community. I decided to lead the charge with Callie and help build the village that I had hoped so hard for.
Now that we had Melissa on board, we set about finding some money for this project. Someone wise once told me that if you're doing work that your community needs, there's always money for it somewhere, in grants, fundraising, or private donations.
As we began researching and applying to funding, we realized that small community-focused grants were a great way to start. Our first grant was for $250. We used it to purchase evidence-based parenting books for our local library. It was a very small way to bring resources to our community quickly. We also realized that we needed flexible funding, grantors who were comfortable supporting all aspects of our work. Everything from staffing costs to rent for our play space, to childcare for our meetings, to meals for our parenting groups. As we gained confidence, we applied for larger and larger grants and were generously awarded funding.
We had an idea, we had found our people, and we had some funding. Now we knew we wanted our full community on board. So we spent the next 6 months collecting data. We dove into census data. How many kids actually live in Beaverhead County? How much poverty exists in our community? We used surveys for families. What supports do you need? For organizations, what do you already offer? For businesses, how do you support families? We wanted a clear picture of the whole early childhood landscape.
Then we hosted a community meeting. We wanted to share what we had learned and ask what we should do next. So we rented out a local restaurant with a separate play area in the back, hired childcare workers, and offered a free dinner.
We ran out of seats. This project had so much momentum now. It had just needed a catalyst, someone to say, let us create this together.
The surveys, data analysis, and community meeting highlighted 3 main areas that would frame our work moving forward. There was a need for parenting classes. There was a desire for a space for families to meet year-round. And there was a need for a location to purchase childhood items like clothing and gear at an affordable price. With this in mind, we got to work.
And that was the fun part, seeing it come to fruition. In the past 2 years, over 1,000 unique kids have utilized the Village Play Space, an indoor playroom designed for 0 to 5-year-olds and their families.
And I have taught over 100 parents and caregivers through our free evidence-based parenting classes that include dinner and childcare. We regularly have 15 moms at our postpartum support group, and about 35 kids and their families come to our themed playdates.
And finally, we have recycled an incalculable amount of children's clothing and gear back into our community through our donation-based store.
Circle of Security, a parenting class we offer in our community, states that just because a parent knows that they need to do something different doesn't mean that they have a clear picture of how to do that in an effective way. We hope that our journey can serve as a model for those with a similar dream that they hope to make a reality. Viewing your needs as opportunities allows you to be a catalyst for creating what you want in an effective way. Only you living in that space can truly understand and address that need. Sometimes, in order to find what you want to see the most, you have to create it yourself.
So, what's missing in your community? Whose needs are not being met? What needs to change? And once you identify that, find the others in your community who feel the same way. Seek out the decision makers, folks from different professions and social circles who all have a stake in the work that you want to do. This is how you know that you're on the right track. Once you have your we, do your research and find your funding. And make sure to continue inviting people into the work.
One of our greatest methods of sustainability has been co-creation. Dale Carnegie is credited with saying, people support a world they help create. And we have found this to be true time and time again. Despite needing a catalyst, a movement cannot belong to any one person. It has to be shared.
We weren't just collecting worker bees to help us meet our specific needs. We were collecting partners who would help us further the movement by co-creating a robust, responsive coalition. The vision needs to be a collaborative effort shared both by those who will take action and those who will receive.
Most of the work of the Early Childhood Coalition was done by moms. Not moms formally trained in early childhood growth or development, but moms trained by fire. Moms who needed it, the space, the community, the resources. Callie and I have a saying that motivated moms can move mountains, and we remind ourselves of that when we get stuck.
But we also know that this phrase is too narrow. Anyone can do this. And our challenge to you is that if you see a need in your community, be the catalyst, find your people, and create what you want to see. Thank you.
Thank you.